All right, we're reading the CSX Railway, the CSX Rule Book of 2014, effective January 1st, 2014. Chapter 5, Centralized Train Dispatching Authorities for the Movement, 500 Dispatcher Bulletins, Dispatcher Message Release Forms. Before occupying control track, the locomotive operator conductor, if assigned one, obtain legal dispatcher bulletin relief for the contains the correct names and employee IDs and train ID. The two, determine all the documents corresponding with each other. Three, the conform the crew members and understanding the requirements. Four, retain and observe the dispatcher bulletins on all trips during the tour duty. 502, contact the train dispatcher when the release form if it is not available for the reporting duty. B, time shows that more than 4 hours have been elapsed since the crew went on duty. 503, 503. They do not occupy the subdivision not listed in the dispatcher bulletin until the locomotive operator conductor contacts the train dispatch on a dispatcher bulletin containing the dispatcher message from the superdivision subdivision or from EC1 instruction from the subdivision. 504. When the train dispatcher transmits a release from the verbal, the conductor locomotive operator 1A repeats the dispatcher bulletin number, the total number of the messages of the train dispatcher. 2. Record the train dispatcher's OK and effective time and initial the dispatcher bulletin. 505. Each of the dispatcher messages in effect with the until fully filled with canceled only dispatcher message dispensing the name of the employee in charge, particular locomotive number that may be superseded. Each of the dispatchers must be prescribed format that includes 1. A sequential item number, 2. The dispatcher message number, 3. The total number of lines of the dispatcher member. 506. When the dispatcher bulletin does not contain the correct conductor or locomotive, the operator names with employee IDs, the train dispatcher must notify to confirm the dispatcher bulletin number, yard assignments, and not required to notify the train dispatcher. 507. 507. If the dispatcher has the irregularities on other train, incorrect conductor, locomotive operator names, and employees and the IDs, the conductor, locomotive operator must contact the train dispatcher to A. obtain corrected copies, B. conform the entire contents of the dispatcher bulletin, A. make corrections on the dispatching bulletins, 2. repeat the correction of the train dispatcher, 3. obtain the train dispatcher's OK and effective time and initials, 4. record the information on the release line. 508. The dispatcher bulletin is sent to means other than dictated by the bulletin printer and CSX Technofax, and the conductor locomotive operator must contact the train dispatcher at 1. To conform the entire contents of the dispatcher bulletin. 2. The train dispatcher's OK, effective and initials, record the information on the release line. 509. A new dispatcher bulletin may be sent after the conductor locomotive operator has been notified that the train dispatcher original bulletin has been destroyed and the new dispatcher bulletin number must be conformed. 510. When trains are recrewed at the other crew changing point of other purpose in the yard training, the train crew must contact with the train dispatcher to obtain the necessary instruction before proceeding. 501. Form EC1. Form EC1. 1. Only may be copied by those who are required to execute the requirements. 2. Be read, understood by all employees affected. 5012. Instructions from the Form EC1 must 1. Be legible in the correct format. 2. Have a circling around the number of the applicable lines. 3. Be sure with erasure alterations except the directive of the train dispatcher. 4. Contain all unauthorized abbreviations. Alright, these are the abbreviations for the following approved by the EC1. There's the symbol for and, avenue, between, conductor, engineer, cancel, conductor, control point, cap signal, deflective detector, direction, train dispatcher, division, east, eastward absolute signal, and east end double track, engine, engineer, hours, interlocking junction, minutes, milepost, miles per hour, maintenance of the way, northward absolute signal, north end double track number, overhead bridge, out of service operator, passenger, southward absolute signal, subdivision siding, south end double track signal, street track and timetable special instruction, westward absolute signal, west end double track, west workforce and yard limits. 5014. If the error discovered in the form EC1 before the train dispatcher gives the OK to the effective time, the initial train dispatcher must direct the employee to make the necessary corrections or destroy all copies. After the train dispatcher gives the OK and effective time and initials firm, the EC1 must be released and the new EC1 must be issued. 5015. Only once the train dispatcher has given his or her okay effective time and initials, only the following updates may be made and directed by the train dispatcher: cancellation, special line item, cancellation, other instruction using the 11, line 11, or modifications direction of line 1A through 1D, or the extension of the time on line 4. Report the location of the train on or track authority, changing the identified locomotive number, modification of other instructions on line 11, and release the entire EC1. 5016. Once the issued form, the EC1 is in effect of the fulfilled release and must be retained observed on all trips during the tour of duty. 5017. A Form EC1 is released entirely on the same form and follows. The employee must state his or her intent for the release of Form EC1. The employee must state the form of the EC1 number and date. The employee must copy the release time, date, initial given with the train dispatcher, and receive. The employees must ensure that all the employees affected by receiving the information mark their Form EC1 accordingly. 502. Other than main signal and siding tracking. The 502.1. The tracks of other main signals or sidings may be used without permission or authority from the train dispatcher control station. 502. When remote control zones and active permission from the remote control operator foreman must be received and repeated before. A. Following tracks with the zone with any of the equipment. B. The controlling the high rail pedestrian controlling with the zone. C. Road worker and blue signal protection is authorized or is established within the zone. 503. Main signal and side trackings. 503.1. Any of the crew other may be obtained the permission and copy authority for the train dispatcher where under the directive and supervision of a conductor or locomotive operator. 503.2. The control and authority for the movement of those tracks and designated with the special instruction the train dispatcher supervises, grants authority for the movement of the trains and on-track equipment for the uncontrolled tracks. The following track types are controlled tracks: main tracks, single tracks, and sidings. 503. The sidings are designated as special instructions are used for the proper purpose of the meeting and the passing of the train. The following side designation: a controlled siding of the track designated with the special instruction for the controlled siding in the signal territory. Signal does not govern the movement of on the siding, the entrance and exit. The signals will only authorize the train to enter the leaving siding. Single siding: a track designated special instruction for the signal siding where the movement of the siding authorized by the block signal rules apply to the movement of the siding. 503.4. Trains must not enter the siding unless authorized by a signal indication of the train dispatcher. 503.5. Train instruction to be taken siding must be enter the siding with the first switch unless directed otherwise by the train dispatcher. Movements must not be beyond the first switch unless the protection had been properly provided by the train dispatcher. B. The train authority to occupy the main track beyond the first switch. 503.6. The train instruction of the track siding, the TWC or D and TWC ABS. The territory must report clearly to the train dispatcher once their train cleared with the main track and switches have been restored to the movement of the main track. 5037. Inform the train dispatcher in any condition with effects for the using of the siding. Do not leave the equipment unattended with the siding without permission by the train dispatcher. 503A. Employing the operating crew of the lead locomotive must communicate to each of the following conditions governing the movements of the train, which is seen confirming the actions to be taken with the locomotive operator when passing. A. The signal aspects of the names, yard limit signals, warning signs, the temporal speed restrictions, conditional stop signs, or burning fuses. 5039. A crew member located with the operating cab of the lead locomotive must announce by radio the following conditions and occurrences. The announcement must include the direction of the travel in the multiple track territories, the track name and or number, single aspect, name and location. Enter the TWC authority. Depart with the TWC authority after reported to clear with the train dispatcher. D. The passenger train at arrival, departure at the station, or the presence of the cars located with the pulpwood poles in the train when they are approaching the train and the equipment with the adjacent tracking. F. Into the siding. 50310. The employee at the controls of the equipment must announce with the radio the following conditions and occurrence. The announcements include the directional travel and multiple track territory with the track number or track name or number. The single aspect location of any of the signal requires the train to approach the next signal and prepare to stop. Signal aspect location of any of the signal requires the operation of the single restricted speed and C. Enter into the working limits. 50311. Train stop at the control track of the crew member must announce the radio the train has stopped, the reason for the stop, the location of the head end, the above information every 15 minutes. 503.12. Other crew members must have operated with the cab of the lead locomotive, but they must acknowledge the announcement that single aspect named will enter the TWC Authority, departure of the TWC Authority, entering with the work limits on the control track, and B, and if other the crews have failed, be acknowledged these announcements. The job briefing must be conducted at the next stop. 503.13. A train being required to stop on the main track, single track, siding to be must be passed by a stopping a minimum of 500 feet from the clearance point, and after the stop, additional room is required for the clear. The train may move for the 500-foot location, must not follow the clearance points. 504. General signal rules. 504.1. General signal rules apply when special instruction dispatcher or form EC1 designates the following authorities or the movement in the effect: the track warrant control, the automatic brake block signals, or the main track yard limit signaled, or the current track of the current of the traffic. The track signals in one direction. The traffic control or control point signals. 504.2. The train must approach to the beginning of the signal territory before to comply with the first signal in service. 504.3. The movement of not covered the fixed signal indication must receive the authorization for the train dispatcher to proceed the restricted speed at an A. The next signal enter the signal territory if the movement has entered the non-signal territory. And C. In the cab signal territory, the trains must proceed in accordance with the cab signal indication after the clearing limits. 504.4. The train must operate according to the indication next fixed signal government for the government. With at 1, the next governing signal can plainly be seen. 2, the rear of the movement that has been passed through all crossover in the turnouts. 3, the train is not required to operate at the restricted speed. 504.5. The signal indication requiring the restricted speed applies to the leading end of the train reaches the next governing signal. The signal aspect required in restricted speed is displayed in the signal governing the movements to non-signal territory, and it will apply until the entire movement of the Korean routes to the turnouts are covered. The leading end of the train is at the end of the signal territory. 504.6. Employees must observe the block signals when the train fails to accurately signal properly. Stop the train immediately and attempt to stop the other trains affected. 3, notify the train dispatcher. 504.7. When leading at the end of the train stops on one locomotive at either length of either of the absolute signal, the train must proceed without receiving the permission of the train dispatcher. 504.8. The train enters the black signal indication but does not require the restricted speed, then stops. The train must be 1 at the COT. The current of the traffic and the track warning control and the automatic block signals. Automatic block signal current of traffic and the current position or CP territory to proceed, but prepared to stop the next signal not exceed the 40 miles an hour unless governed by the slower speed. The train must not exceed 40 miles per hour until the next signal is visible. The signal displayed with the proper indication of the track of the signal in the clear. The yard laying the signal and the track warning control automatic brake signal territory. Train must proceed at the speeding of the permit stopping within one half of the range of the vision of stopping the short of the train, a car, or obstruction on the track equipment. The stop signal does not exceed 40 miles an hour unless governed in lower speed. To the next signal, the train must not exceed 40 miles an hour until the next signal is visible. The signal displays a proceed indication, and the track is to be signal is clear. The cab signal territory. Train must proceed in accordance with the cab signal indication. 504.9. If the train enters into the black signal indication that does not require restricted speed, the train 1 reduces the speed to 50 miles an hour left after passing the distance signal governing after the approach of the railroad crossing at the grade at the beginning with the signal territory. The train must approach the home signal prepared to stop. 1. The leading end of the movement reaches the home signal. 2. It can be seen with the indication of the home signal permits the train just to proceed. 2. B. By passing the distance signal reducing the 10 miles per hour less approaching the home signal not on a railroad crossing at the grade. In other cab, the signal territory is the territory. The train must approach the home signal prepared to stop and not exceed 40 miles per hour unless governed by the slower speed. 3. The resume of the speed authorized with the distance signal when the home signal is seen to displayed with the preceding indication. 2. In a cab signal territory, the train must proceed in accordance with the cab signal indication. 504.10. When switching and at the point of the signal indication governs the movement to provide with sufficient room when feasible locomotive to recouple the train behind it leaving the signal, but the train must not proceed proceed except with the signal indication authorized by the train dispatcher. 504.11. The train may occupy the specific segment, but in both directions when authorized by the train dispatcher under the following conditions. The train must clear the track segment before the limit that expires. The train dispatcher must be advised. 2. The authority does not relieve the crew complying with the block signal indications. 3. The train with the report must occupy the train segment, again with the receiving the new authority. 504.12. Train equipment on the siding and other tracks must leave the standing clear of the insulated joints and other clearance points. 504.13. Do not open the switch and provide with the access signal track unless authorized the signal indication or permission of the train dispatcher. Permission of the train dispatcher is required to A. Unlock the electrically locked switches. B. Break the seal of the operating emergency release or electrical lock switch. C. Place a dual controlled powered operated switch in hand position, operated in hand position. Or B. D. Spike a non-dual controlled power operated switch. 504.14. When necessary to place a dual controlled power operated switch in the hand position. 1. Unlock the switch lock. 2. Place the selector in the hand position. 3. On pneumatic power operated switches, unlock the small lever at the end of the machine and pull out the full stroke. Operate the hand thrower level until the switch position completely aligned to the opposite position in the back. Ensure the points are controlled by the operating hand thrower lever. This must be done whether or not the switch points appear to be lined for the desired route. 5. The line switches for the route to be used on the lock switch lever. 6. When the making of a face point movement, the entire movement must be clear of the switch points before the selector lever may be restored to the motor power position. 7. When making a trailing power movement, the restore the selector lever to the motor power position after leading the wheels of the movement have been moved onto the switch points. 8. The switch employee who places the dual controlled switch point in the hand position must restore with the switch and motor power positions unless arranged are made. 9. When restored motor power, lock the selector and lever into the motor power. 10. Notify the train dispatcher locomotive operator when the switch has been restored to the motor or power position. 504.15. During the time of a dual controlled switch in the hand position, the switch movements may be passing the signal to govern which indication is stop or restricted without permission of the train dispatcher. After restoring the switch to the motor or power position, the train must proceed at the signal indication permission of the train dispatcher. 504.16. The train permission of the train dispatcher to make the reversal movement of the limits within the limits of the same block. The movement must be made with restricted speed with the crew member located on the rear of the movement unless the following conditions are met. 1. The move will not exit the block. 2. The move will not exceed 10 miles an hour. 3. The move will not exceed one train length or up to 1 mile. 4. The movement will not occur with the entire main track of the yard limits. 5. The movement will not occur at the entering a drawbridge. 6. Will not occur at the entering or entering work limits. 7. There is no interfering with the highway or pedestrian crossing at the grade. 504.17. A train may make reversal movements with the limits of the same block without permission of the train dispatcher if the following conditions are met. 1. The movement must be made with the restricted speed. 2. And the crew member and other qualified employees positioned with the ground ahead with the leading and prepared to stop the opposing movement. 504.18. Permission of the train dispatcher is required of the train to make the reverse movement outside of the limits of the block before granting the permission by the train dispatcher to determine whether the designated track is clear with the non-authorized opposing movements. The train must move at the restricted speed until the leading of the reaches the more favorable signal. 504.19. The properly notify the train dispatcher when signal displays a stop on a set aspect unless the reason for such an aspect is apparent. 504.20. A train approaching the fixed signal requiring the stop must be before any of the movement passing for the signal. Train passes the stop signal without permission. 1. Notify the train dispatcher. 2. Provide the warning against the approaching trains. 504.221. To pass the stop signal, the train must have the permission of the train dispatcher. The conductor or locomotive operator must contact the train dispatcher. Follow his or her instruction. A stop signal may be passed and restricted without the permission of the train dispatcher. When necessary, recouple their own to the own train located immediately beyond the signal, and no powered operated switches are involved. 504.22. After the position has been confirmed, the train must operate with restricted speed with the entire train has cleared the control point switches and spring switches for the leading wheels, and have A. Pass the favorable fixed signal, B. The entire non-signal territory, C. If the cab signal of the train operates with the cab and signal must increase the speed until they have no one have run one length of the 500 feet in the past the location where no favorable cab signal was received. 504, 323. A train stop at the stop signal is remotely controlled with the railroad crossing at the grade, but the train dispatcher is controlling the intersecting line. A train must receive the passing permission to pass the stopping indication. 504.24. When the train is stopped with the remote controlled railroad crossing at the grade within the train dispatcher does not have the control over the intersection, not immediately conflicting with the movement, is evident, complying with the special instructions. If there are no special instructions, A, if equipped with a time release, the delayed ending of the trail must not be more than 2,250 feet from the signal of the train remaining with the during of the time release interval. 1. Operating with time release. 3. If the signal changes proceeds. If the signal does not change, expiration of the time release proceeds. The permission of the train dispatcher to pass the stop signal to pull the signal at least 30 feet, stop and clear the intersecting after waiting for a period of time equal to time reverse release interval. The train must be proceed with the restricted speed of this next signal. No next signal until the entire train clears out of the turnouts and crossovers leading out of the train reaches the opposing absolute signal. B. If not equipped with a time release, 1. Receive the permission of the train dispatcher to pass the stop signal. 2. Pull by the stop signal at least 30 feet, but the stopping and clearing the intersection line. Waiting 10 minutes and not conflicting the movement with the proceed with restricted speed of the next signal. If there is no next signal, till the entire train clears the train out of the crossover, leading to the end of the train reach of the opposing absolute signal. 504.25. When the train is stopped automatically, railroad crossing at the grade, no conflicting movement is evident, complying with the special instruction. If not, no special instruction. 1. The leading end of the train must be stopped at least not more than 250 feet with the stopping signal and must remain in location during the time release interval. 2. The operating with the time release in accordance with the instruction posted at the location found in the timetable special instruction. 3. If signal changes and proceeds. 4. The signal does not change with the expiration of the time release interval. 1. Receive the permission for the train dispatcher to pass the stop signal. If not conflicting with the movement of the evidence, is the train must pull the stop signal at least 30 feet for the stop of the clearing of the intersection line. The train must wait with the period of time equal to the time release interval. And 4. If not conflicting with the movement as evident, the train may not proceed restricted speed with the next signal. If there is no next signal, to the point at which the entire train is and through the turnouts and crossovers are until the leading end of the movement reaches the absolute signal. 504.26. The train must return to the train indicator with the turn of the train left standing and immediately beyond the railroad crossing at the grade. The indicator conveys the information at the position of the power operated switches. However, the indicator light displays a white light. The movement may pass the signal displaying the stop at the return of the train provided. A. The permission received with the train dispatcher to operate the hand position any power of the switches that are not lined up in the desired route. B. The movement may be made with the over the power switches in the power motor or the power position when the switches are aligned in the desired route. C. The release located inside a signal release crossing at the grade if this hole is equipped and if operated with a single reverse movement over the crossing of the received. 504.27. If the train has the signal indication more favorable than the approach encounters the stop signal, a signal required with restricted speed, the train must 1. Comply with the signal indication consistent with a good train handling unless the conditions require emergency brake application. 2. Report the incident of the train dispatcher. And 504.28. Promptly remote the signal aspect displayed with the train dispatcher with regard to the signal as more restrictive indication that can be conveyed with the signal and the following exceptions. If one of the indication is possible, the indication governs. B. When the arms of semaphore signal can be seen in the govern, when only the control light is displayed with the cluster of the lights with the color of the position and light signal means it's the same. 2 lights are in the cluster, and one or more lower units of the color light except the light signal aspects and the dark aspects to be observed, though the lights should be displayed when were displayed as red. That does not may apply to the rule C1-1290. A. 504.29. When a fixed signal is absent of the place of the usually displayed, the most restrictive indication can be given with the signal and governs the movement immediately reported the absence of the signal to the train dispatcher. 504.30. The train observing the improper position. The train's crews observing the improper signal aspect permitting the train to proceed. 1. Bring the train to the safe normal stop before the passing of the signal. 2. Notify the train dispatcher governed by his or her instructions. And 3. Provide warning approaching train unit until relieved by the train dispatcher. 504.31. Other permission for the train dispatcher to assist the standing of the after receipt the permission of the train dispatcher or locomotive may be permitted to the same, if in the same block to assist the standing load standing train and provided with the train dispatcher informed that the clear understanding exists between all the crew members as the location of the standing train. And two, all crew members, a crew member of the standing provided with the warning is against assisting locomotive. Three, the crew assisting locomotive perform the following: one, stop 1/4 mile before the standing train. Two, approach the location of the restricted speed. Three, stop prior to the coupling. Four, conduct job briefing with the crew member off the standing train. Four, five, couple the standing train and provided the need assistance. Six, contact the train dispatcher provided location detachment. Seven, obtain the permission with the train dispatcher detach. Eight, detach from the train and stop. Remain stopped until the obtaining the permission from the train dispatcher to proceed, even when operating with the current and traffic in the current of the traffic territory. 50432, on permission of the train dispatcher before leaving the equipment unintended with the control track and provided with the following information: the train dispatcher for the dispatcher record. 1. Specify the location of both ends of the equipment. And 2. Identify the initial number of locomotives in the car at each end of the equipment. 3. Total the number of locomotives and cars. And 4. Information provided with the conformed and to be correct with all crew members. 50433, the train dispatcher may grant authority to remove unintended equipment for the control track of the once the train dispatcher verifies that clear understanding exists among the crew members as the location of the standing equipment. The train must 1. Stop 1/4 mile but the standing of the equipment. 2. Approach the location of the standing equipment at restricted speed. 50434. When removing unattended equipment from the control track, this advises the train dispatcher the number of the locomotives of the car moved, identify the initial number of the locomotive of the cars at the end of each of such equipment. 50435. The removal of signals from the service only authorized by the proper authority in the following circumstances: storm flood renders the signal system inoperative. The proper restoration of signal system disruption for other causes cannot be affected. The construction work necessity of the single temporary removal for the surface. 50436. Special instruction dispatcher for the form EC1 may temporarily remove the block signal or signal rules from the service. When the signal system is suspended, establish an alternated method operating and notifying all train affected. 50437. Unless otherwise specified, when the signal is temporarily removed from the specified service, the train must approach the absolute signal prepared to stop and not to pass these signals without the permission of the train dispatcher. To stop at the drawbridges, railroad crossing at the grade governed by the rules and special instructions in effect of the particular location. Approach all the public crossing at the grade of the equipped with the automatic grade and crossing where any device is prepared to stop to provide protection. 4. Examine the switch points and the spring switches to conform their line and switches locked before making facing point movements. 5. Operate switch derails in accordance with the rules governing operating switches and derails by hand. 50438. Understanding certain conditions, single car and single locomotive until they may fail to activate the block signals the highway railway crossing of the grade of the warning device. These movements must not be stopped or sanded. If necessary, to use the sand stop, the locomotive of the car may be provided with a clear and sand portion of the rail immediately after stopping. 50439. Train occupying the rusty rails covered with the sand, oil, and other matter may also fail to shunt the track circuits. Employees must especially vigilantly detect, report such a condition unless otherwise instructed with the train dispatcher. They may provide with the protection. 50440. If the rails are rusted and cars have been left standing, wheels are rusted, and the crew members must confirm with the train dispatcher. If the rails are rusted, signal maintainers must not train dispatcher. Alright, the 505, track warrant control on a non-signal. That's TWC. The track warrant control non-signal is marked with a D. When the authority to move to the control track is designated with special instruction dispatcher message for the form EC1 of the track warrant control non-signal that will be governed by the verbal authority from the train dispatcher. The train must not enter the control track of the track warranted control non-signal territory unless authorized to do so by the train dispatcher as the train working as part of the engineering work group has been designated work limits. Copy of the authority of the train dispatcher on the form EC1 of the prescribed format where the one main track of the service, the track number, the name will be designated in the authority. 5054. with the limited authority designated with the EC form EC1 by the station names, milepost, switch, signal, or control point. 5055. The following describes the limited authority. When a location is a control point, the end of the authority is the home signal control point signal. When the location is a passenger station, the portion specified with the train dispatcher on the form EC1. When the location is a hand-operated switch, the following point on the switch. When multiple hand-operated switch, the following point on which the switch, unless otherwise specified with the train dispatcher on form EC1. Other stations in the end of the authority is a station sign. 5056. The train dispatcher may authorize the train to enter the track warrant control non-signal territory, a hand-operated switch, in order to clear the switch and proceed with the opposite direction. 5057. When the train is authorized to operate in both directions, it may operate in either direction. Switches designated limits made left into the instruction by the train dispatcher during the time of the authority is in effect. The authority remains in effect until canceled. Before the authority is released, a crew member must ensure that all switches are locked in a normal position. 5. A train dispatcher must not authorize the movements when limits in the authority. 5058. To make reverse movements, the train authorized to move in one direction must obtain authorization for the train dispatcher. Before authorizing the train dispatcher must determine the track to be used clear and not opposing the movements that have been authorized. 3. Once the authority of the train make the reverse movements with limits. 5059. The train must report specifically locations have been directed with the train dispatcher. Once the train has been reported specific location, the train must not enter the section of the train unless the new authority is obtained. 50510. The track warrant authority is fulfilled when the train operating with the specified directions clears the limits. After the train clears the limits of the track, the warrant authority, the conductor of the track, conductor and locomotive operator must properly release the authority unless otherwise directed by the train dispatcher. 50511. The train must not release an authority or report on a specific location. A. The crew member other than employee observe the rear end of the marker and verify the rear car's initial numbers. B. The train passes the defect detector and gives the actual count of the degrees of the count of the previous defective detector actual count made by the crew member. C. The train is controlled by the track of the hand-operated switches, the switch and the derailleur if equipped with it has been restored and locked in the normal position. D. A train with properly functioning telemetry indicates the rear of the train is intact. It displays the indicating air pressure of the rear of the train given and expected in the reading. The distance 3. The distance traveled with the lead end of the train. The train's length is determined by the use of the odometer on the head of the train device. 3 miles beyond the clear point. 50512. When the hand operating switches are used before releasing the authority, reported the switch location complete a switch point position awareness form or a SPAF as in ink. Report the following to the train dispatcher. Location of the switch operated switch is restored and locked in normal position. Time switch initially reserved. Time switch restored and locked in normal position. And name of employee who operated the switch. 3. The retaining the switch position awareness form until the next tour of duty. 50513. Other obtaining of the permission of the train dispatcher to assist on the standing of the train. After receiving the permission of the train dispatcher, locomotive to assist the standing of the train, provided with one train dispatch informed with a clear understanding exists between all crew members of the location of the standing train. 2. A crew member standing with the provides a warning against the assisting locomotive. 3. A crew member assisting a locomotive performing the following: 1. Stopping a quarter mile before the standing train. 2. Appropriating the location with restricted speed. Stopping prior to the coupling. Conducting the job briefing with a crew member of the standing train, coupling the standing train provided with the needed assistance, contacting the train dispatcher provided the location of detachment, obtaining the permission of the dispatcher for the detachment from the train, and detach the standing from the remaining stop until the obtaining of the new authority with the train dispatcher. 50514. Other obtaining permission with the train dispatcher before leaving equipment unattended with the control track, provided with the following information to the train dispatcher: 1. Specifying the location of both ends of the equipment. 2. The identifying the initials number of the locomotive at the cars at each end of the equipment. 3. A total number of the locomotive and cars, number of locomotives and cars, and information provided with the confirmed to be corrected with all car crew members. 50515. The train dispatcher may grant authority to the train to remove unattended equipment before the controlled track once the train dispatcher verifies the clear understanding exists among The crew members at the location of the standing equipment. The train must stop 1/4 mile from the standing equipment to approach the location of the standing equipment as restricted speed. 505.16 advised the train dispatcher following the unintended equipment is removed from the control track. 1. Identifying the initial number of the locomotive of the cars at each end of the equipment and a total number of the locomotives of the cars removed. 505.17 the train overruns as an authority notified the train dispatcher provided a warning against the approaching trains. 506, track warrant control with an automatic block signal, TWC ABS. When authority of the movement of the control track is designated with a special instruction or dispatcher message from the form EC1 of the track warrant control automatic brakes block signal 1, the trains are authorized to occupy the control tracks as verbally authorized authority from the train and the dispatcher. The train movements are governed with a signal indication given. General signal rules are also in effect. 5062, the train must not enter and make an initial movement on the control track. Warranting control automatic brake system. Automatic brake signal is limited unless authorized by the variable authority from the train dispatcher as the train working as part of the engineering work group with the designated work limits. 5063, the copy of the authority of the train dispatcher for the form EC1 in the prescribed format. When the more of the one main track is in service, the track number, the name of the designated within the authority. 5064, the limit of the track warrant authority must be designated on the form EC1 by the station name, milepost, or switch, signal, or control point. 506, the following describes the limit of authority. A control point end of the authority with a home signal and control point signal. A passenger station at the point specified by the train dispatcher on the form of the EC1. A hand operated when in location on the end of the authority is the following point of the switch. Multiple hand operated when in operated switch location as the end of the authority of the following point of the switch unless otherwise specified by the train dispatcher on form EC1. And when in location of other stations, the end of authority is the station sign. 5066, the train operating with the track warrant control automatic blocking signal territory had an operated switch conductor with the locomotive operator must receive authorization from the train dispatcher. After the authority was granted, the crew member must take action to ensure the adequate signal protection by complying with the following. At switches not equipped with a bolt lock or electric lock, one crew member must properly operate the switch and remain at the switches. Wait 5 minutes before starting the train movement. A train is seen, heard, and approaching with the track to be occupied by the 5 minutes that has been elapsed. Switch must be locked in normal position. 3. Before operating switch again, permission may be obtained with the train dispatcher to occupy the controlled switch. B. At the switch is equipped with the bolt lock. A crew member must properly operate the bolt lock, remain with the switch. Wait 5 minutes before operating the switch. And C. At the switch is equipped with electrical lock. Train movement may begin as soon as the switches have been properly aligned. 5067. The train dispatcher may relieve the crew members from 5 minutes of waiting before the period after it has been determined that no train in the movement has been authorized to move in the direction of the switches from the last control point. One of the switches have been in line of the movement. The crew member must immediately notify the train dispatcher, who must not authorize the movement of the train from the last control point if the notification has been received. 5068. The train authorized to operate in both directions. 1. It may operate in either direction. 2. Switches in the designated lines may be left instructed with the train dispatcher during the time of the authority is in effect. 3. The authority remains in effect until canceled. Before the authority is released, the crew member must ensure that all switches are locked in normal position. 5. The train dispatcher must not authorize other movements within the limits of authority. 5069. The train must report specific locations directed by the train dispatcher. Once the train has reported the specified location, the train must not re-enter the section of the train action track unless the new authority is obtained. 50610. The track warning authority is filled when the train operating with a specified direction clears the limits. After the train cleared the limits of the track warrant, the conductor of the locomotive operator must properly release the authority of the train dispatcher. 50611. A train must not release an authority or report a specific location until the crew member or other employee observes the rear end of the mark of the verifies the rear car's initial number. To be the train passes the defective detector and gives an actual count of the agreed to the count of the provided previous defective detector, an account made within the crew member. C. The train clears the control track with a hand operated switch with the switch and derail if the equipped has been restored and locked down in the normal position. D. A train equipped with properly functional telemetry includes the rear of the train is intact. The display indicating with the pressure of the rear of the train gives the expected reading, and the 3. The distance traveled in the lead end of the train. The train length as determined by the use of the head train device, 3 miles beyond the clearance point. 50612. The train overruns. The authority notifies the train dispatcher provides warning against the approaching trains. 507, main track yard limits no signal, or YL, yard limits. When authority and movement of the control track is designated with a special instruction dispatcher or form EC1 with the main track yard limits not signaled, verbal authority for the train dispatcher governing the trains. 5072, the train must not enter the control track of the main track yard limits if non-signaled unless unauthorized to do so with the train dispatcher or as working with the engineering work group of the designated work of the limits. Copy authority to the train dispatcher of the form EC1 of the prescribed format where more than one track of the main track is serviced. The track number, the name will be designated in authority. All movements must be made with the permanent stop with one half of the range of the vision, stopping in the short of the train, car, and obstruction on track equipment, improperly lined switches, or a stop signal not exceeding 20 miles an hour until the leading end of the reaches the far limits. 5075, the train completes with the use of the main track yards. The conductor and locomotive operator must contact with the train dispatcher at the state if the main track is clear of the equipment, B, if unintended with equipment is left within the limits. 508, main track yard limit signaled. 508, when the authority of the movement of the control track is designated with the special instruction dispatcher form EC1 of the main track yard limit signaled, general signal rules are in effect. 508.2, the train must not enter and make an initial movement in the control of the tracks of the main track yard limit signaled territory unless authorized to do so signaled and verbally authority from the train dispatcher. 508, the train operating with the signal indication requires the approaching the next signal prepared with the stop must operate with the speed either that permits stopping with one half of the range of the vision, stopping short of the train, car, or obstruction on the track of the equipment, improperly lined switch or stop signal, or not exceeding 20 miles an hour until leading end of the train passes the favorable switches, signal, or reaches the far end of the yard limits, and they enter the train, clearing all turnouts and crossovers. 508.4, the yard crew, conductor, locomotive operator may receive the information authorization from train dispatcher, the main track yard limit signaled territory, and operated switch when granted authority. The crew member must ensure the adequate signal protection complying with the following. A, switches not equipped with a bolt lock or an electrical lock. A crew member must operate with the switches remain on at the switches 4 or 5 and wait 5 minutes before starting the train movement. The train is seen and heard and approaching the track to be occupied with the 5 minutes and elapsed with the switches must be locked in normal position. 3, before operating the switching, permission must be obtained with the train dispatcher to occupy the controlled switch. At the switch equipped with the bolt lock, a crew member must properly operate the bolt lock, remain at the switch, and wait 5 minutes before operating the switches. C, at switches equipped with electrical lock, the train movement may begin as soon as the switches have been properly aligned. 508.5, the train dispatcher must receive or relieve all crew members of the 5-minute waiting period after the train dispatcher determines no train is moving and it has been authorized to move the direction of the switches in the last control point. One of the switches had been lined in the movement. The crew members immediately notified the train dispatcher who must authorize the movement of the train in the last control point if the notification has been received. 509, current of the traffic and the track signal in one direction. When the authority for the movement of the control track is designated special instruction dispatcher or EC1 or control current of traffic, the general signal rule is in effect when the moving of the current of the traffic, the track warning, control, signaled, non-signaled, are in effect with the moving against the current of the traffic except for the working train working as part of the engineering work group as designated work limits. 509.2, the train will move the current of the traffic must enter the entering initial movement of the current of the traffic territory unless authorized by the signal indication of the verbal authority from the train dispatcher. The conductor locomotive operator must receive authorization from the train dispatcher to enter the current of the traffic of the territory. Hand-operated switches granted authority, and crew members must ensure the adequate signal protection complying with the following. At switches not equipped with a bolt lock and an electrical lock, crew member must properly operate the switches to wait the 5 minutes for the starting of the train. If the train has been seen or heard of approaching the track occupied before the 5 minutes has been elapsed, the switches must be locked in normal position, and before operating the switch again, obtain permission for the train dispatcher occupied at the control switch track and switches equipped with the bolt lock. A crew member must properly operate the bolt lock and wait 5 minutes before operating the switches. And C, as switches equipped with the electrical lock, the train movement may begin as soon as the switches have been properly aligned. 5094. When the train enters the current traffic territory, hand-operated switch of train dispatcher will relieve the crew member of 5 minutes waiting of the period of determining no train is moving and has been the authority to move the direction of the switches to the last control point. When the switches has been lined in movement, the crew member must immediately notify the train dispatcher what must not authorize the movement of the train and last control point until the notification has been received. 5095. When the train clears the track of the hand-operated switches, the switches have been restored to the normal position. The conductor locomotive operator must report the clear of the train dispatcher. The train must enter the block with authorization of the train dispatcher. 5096. Train move against the current of the traffic approach to the fixed signal speeds permits compliance with the most restrictive aspects of signals. Such signals can display signal indication does not authorize move against the current of the traffic. No change in the direction of the current of the traffic unauthorized. The train dispatcher. 5097. The train operating against the current of the traffic must not reverse movement until the train receives verbal permission of the train dispatcher. The train dispatcher ensures the track to be used in clear opposing movements, and EC1 authority to operate against the current of traffic is released. 510. Traffic control. When authority of the movement of the control track is designated with a special instruction, the dispatcher mentioned from the EC1 of the traffic control, the general signal rules also are in effect of the signal indication authorized to govern the train movements in either direction. 510.2. The train must not enter the make initial movement of the control tracks in the track control territory unless authorized in signal indication verbal authority in the train dispatcher. 510.3. The conductor locomotive operator must have the authority of the train dispatcher to enter the control track and the hand-operated switches must properly operate the switches once authorized to do so. 510.4. The train must not clearly at hand-operated switches unless equipped with the signal electrical lock permit authorized speed with the other switches does not exceed 20 miles an hour, and only siding with no immediately signals authorized speed does not exceed 30 miles an hour. 510.5. Any track using the a train using any track which was not permitted to clear must leave the part of the train connecting in the signal track, leaving the switch open and the work is completed. 510.6. When the train clears the track and hand-operated switches have been restored to the normal position, the conductor locomotive operator must report clear of the train dispatcher. 2. The train must not re-enter the block without authorization of the train dispatcher. 511. Control point signals. When authority to move into the control track is designated with a special instruction dispatcher message or form EC1 of the control point signals, generally the signal rules are also in effect. The signal indication authorized the government with the train movements in either direction. 511.12. The train must not enter the make initial movement in the control track of the control point signals in the territory unless authorized in the signal indication verbal authority with the train dispatcher. When the rear movement of the stop between the home signal and the control point of the railroad crossing at the grade of the signal indication permission of the train dispatch is required to make a reverse movement, to make a forward movement after making a reverse movement. 511.4. A signal aspect of the permitting a train to proceed and stop at the signal before retreats. The crew must stop using the safe handling techniques unless the conditions require emergency braking application. 2. Report a signal changing the train dispatcher. 511.5. The train dispatcher stops while moving the train to the control point. The train must not move the either direction until receiving a proper signal authorization. Train dispatcher. 511.6. When leading the train stop of less than one locomotive length, either the signal or the associated control point, the train must not proceed without receiving the permission from the train dispatcher. 512. The cab signal system. Generally, the cab signal system rules apply to designated special instruction dispatcher message or form EC1. The movement of the train equipped with the cab signal apparatus is prohibited except when authorized special instruction from the EC1 or as follows. Movement of the government with the fixed signal indication. Movement is made with restricted speed unless with the train dispatcher unauthorized with the alternated method. The cab signal apparatus for the leading and the first locomotive of the control car must be tested and found to the operation within the 24 hours before the locomotive control car leaves the initial terminal. If the test equipment is not available at the point and where another end will be required to become a lead unit, the unit must be also tested with the initial terminal. The 512.4. The employee performing in the test must be post a signed copy of the test of the results in the cab of the locomotive. 2. Leave a signed copy of the test results at the test location. 512.5. The cab signal apparatus de-energized after the departure test has been made. It must be tested after again before the CSSS territory. This may be done where the test tracks are received when the locomotive cab the CSS cab signal system are equipped with self-testing features. The locomotive dispatching the points of the cab signaling system Territory points to the test rack of the provided must have the cab signal apparatus energized entire trip unless locomotives are equipped with the self-testing feature. 512.7. After taking charge of the locomotive operator must ensure that the cab signal and the apparatus energized with the train stop alarm with the knowledge of the device operated with the train stop at the fail sound of the locomotive operator. 1. May not enter the equipped territory. 2. Contact the train dispatcher. And 3. Record the occurrence of the prescribed form. 512.8. If necessary, entering the route, operating with the equipped unit and the did not undergo the departure test, the cab signal must be considered with the inoperative unless the train control system can be tested using the locomotive self-testing feature when equipped. 512.9. Under the following conditions, the train experience the cab signal, automatic train stop, and a train control failure to be dispatched on the turnaround point governed by the rules applying to the end of the route failure. The equipment is used at the turnaround service between the originating terminal and the turnaround point. The equipment received the satisfactory cab signal testing with the period is 24 hours. 3. No mechanical forces are on duty to turn around at the point of the repair of the equipment. 4. The crew advised of the train dispatcher failure to before the late evening of the turnaround point. The equipment must be repaired and replaced at the next forward point will not cause the undue delay of the train. And 6. The operator records the occurrence of the prescribed form. 5.10.12. The movement of the train equipped with the cab signals train control the automatic train stop not in the operative condition of the direction of this prohibited by the cab signal system territory except when the failures occur with the locomotive leaves initial terminal. 5.12.11. Once advised of the cab signal train control and automatic train stop failure, the train dispatcher must 1. Inform the train dispatcher to control the connecting dispatch district or division or railroad, and 2. Not grant permission for the train to pass stop restricted proceeding restricted signals unless determined by the block to be entered and not occupied. In an emergency, the train dispatcher may authorize movement in an occupied block. 5.12.12. The train dispatcher must make a record of the train movements when the train authorized to operate under the following conditions: inoperable cab signals, train control, automatic train system stop, and not equipped with cab signals. 5.12. When the cab aspect flips, then momentarily change the aspects, then return the original aspect. The locomotive operator must notify the train dispatcher as soon as possible, record the occurrence on the prescribed form, give the following information: signal name, or to the signal name, the track designation, milepost, and if flipped, in acknowledgement of the cab signal. 5.12. Locomotive operators are required to verbally report of the proper authority record on the prescribed form of any of the following cab signal system apparatus issues: flips, failures, nonconformities, or other unusual occurrences. 5.12. 15. Cab signals will not indicate the conditions ahead of the when the locomotive is ahead, when moving against the current of the traffic, pushing cars, or running backward, not equipped with cab signals apparatus for back movement. 5.12. Reverse movement must not be made with the verbal permission of the train dispatcher. Must made with the restricted speed before granting permission with the train dispatcher. Must 1. Determine the track to be used with clear opposing movements. 2. Ensure the block division applied to protect against the operating movements. 15. 5.13. Cab signals without wayside intermediate. The cab signal should conform with each fixed signal in each seconds after the train enters the block. If the cab signal and fixed signal does not conform, the most restrictive signal indicates with the governing movement. The locomotive operator must notify the train dispatcher as soon as possible, given the location of the track and the nonconformity occurred. The 3. Locomotive operator must record the occurrence of the prescribed form. If the cab signal conforms with the fixed signal upon entering the block, and the fixed signal will govern the inconformity cannot be determined due to the absent impair fixedly displayed on the fixed signal, the cab signal will govern the movement after the train has run one entire length of 5 or 500 feet, whether the distance is greater or it has been cleared the control with the interlocking area if applicable. 5.13.4. If the cab signal changes between the fixed signals, the cab signals will be governed and subject to the following restriction. When the cab signal inspects the restriction between the fixed signal, the locomotive operator must take the ones to reduce the restricted speed. If the control point of the restriction requires a medium limited speed and the cab signal changes to the more favorable aspect, the speed must not be increased until the train has run its length. If the cab signal aspect is restricting to more of the favorable aspect, the speed must not increase until the train has run in a length of 500 feet, which is distance and greater. If the cab changes to the clear approach of its medium between the fixed signal and the train must immediately begin with reduction to the limited speed, must further reduce the medium speed unless the next signal is seen to be displayed as a more favorable aspect. 513.5. If the cab signal does not conform with the fixed signal at interest block, the fixed signal is more restrictive than the cab signal. If the fixed signal will govern the movement of the entire block. 513.6. When the fixed automatic block signals are used, the cab signal of the train control with the automatic train stop that fails en route, the locomotive operator will initiate the alternative method on operation. They operated with the train according to the fixed signal indication, cab signal indication, if operable with a speed of not exceeding 40 miles an hour unless the train dispatcher authorizes the alternate movement and by no signal displays the restricted speed, proceed restricting unless authorized by the train dispatcher. Notify the train dispatcher crew members of the reason location as the failure is possible. Consider the failed apparatus inoperative until the locomotive has been repaired, tested, or found in the functional properly. Record the occurrence with the prescribed form. 513.7. Consider the cab signal apparatus has failed, but the fixed signal correctly displayed. Any of the following conditions occurred: the train stops, alarmed, and fails to sound with the cab signal. Change to the more restrictive aspect. B. The train stops, continues to sound even when the cab signal was changed. The acknowledged the speed of the train was reduced to the speed required with the cab signal indication. C. The cab signal conforms to the two consecutive fixed signal locations. D. The damage for the fault occurs at any part of the cab signal apparatus. E. When the approaching the fixed signal displaying the approach of the more favorable aspect of the cab signal system territory with the fixed automatic block signals, the cab signal displays the restricting and fails to conform after the passing of the fixed signal, or when the approaching of the fixed signal displays a slow clear or slow approach, restricted proceed, restriction, or stop signal, the cab signal displays as an aspect of favorable for the approach. 513.8. The train dispatcher may authorize alternative method of operation until the cab cab signal service territory where the fixed automatic block systems are used under the following conditions. A. Train is not equipped with the cab signal apparatus. Movement is unoperative. The cab signal, train control, automatic train stop. C. Cab signal portion of the wayside signal equipment is not operative. 513.9. Alternate method of operating movements authorized by the train dispatcher may proceed. Authorized speed not exceeding 79 miles an hour be governed the fixed signal indication with the cab signal indication inoperable, not pass signal displayed with restriction preceded unless authorized by the train dispatcher. 513.10. When alternate methods of operating authorization, the train dispatcher must not grant permission and with the movements to stop the restriction signal until determined by the block to be entered and not occupied. In an emergency, train dispatch may authorize the movement into an occupied block. 513. If the cab signal portion of the wayside signal equipment is not operative, the train dispatcher has issued the form EC1 indicating the limits of the area affected by the locomotive operator must 1. Cut out the train control system of the locomotive, cut in the cab signal apparatus, make movement of the limits of the effective area governed by the dispatcher authorities using the alternate method of operation of movement. Alright, 514. Cab signals without wayside intermediate. The following requirements apply to the territory designated with special instruction on Form EC1 where the cab signals are used without intermediate fixed automatic block signals. When control point signals indication will govern the movement, will control the point limits and through the control points only. 2. The distance signals where in service will govern approach to the home signals. 3. Between the fixed signals, the movement of the governor of the cab signals. 514.2. If the cab signals fix the signals do not conform to the train pass control point signal governing the movement into within the cab signal territory with an intermediate fixed automatic block signal, the most restrictive signal indication with the governing movement of the control point once the train clears the control point, movement of the governed solely in the cab signal. 514.3. If the cab signal fails en route, the locomotive operator must follow the actions. 1. Notify the train dispatcher crew and the crew of the region locating of the failure as soon as possible. 2. Operate the restricted unless governed by a clear the next interlocking signal or form EC1. And 3. Consider the failed apparatus inoperative until the locomotive has been repaired, tested, or found to be functional properly. 514. Crew member of the train operation. 514.4. The crew member of the train operates from the cab signal territory with fixed automatic block signals with inoperative cab signals must remind the locomotive operator of the requirements of reverse movements when the train is 2 miles from the cab signal territory without fixed intermediate automatic block signals. The last station stop prior to the cab signal territory without fixed automatic block signals. 514.5. The train control automatic train stop then for out of the cab signal remains operative. The locomotive operator must follow the actions. 1. 1. Notify the train dispatcher crew of the reasons, location as soon as possible. Not exceed 40 miles an hour unless governed by the clear to the next interlocking signal or on the form EC1. And 3. Consider the apparatus inoperative until the locomotive has been repaired, tested, and found to be functional properly. 5.14.6. The train operating with the locomotive other than the leading end of the movement must operate with restricted speed unless governed by the clear next interlocking signal on the form or the form EC1. 5.14.7. When the field part of the cab signal system signal system is removed from the service, the signal department of the train dispatcher may authorize trains to operate the cab signals to operate with accordance with the clear and interlocking indication. 2. Must inform the trains that the limits of the cab signal system ouaged and the control points where the clear to the next interlocking indication will be displayed. 5.14.8. The train must approach the control point at the clear next interlocking indication to be displayed, but prepared to stop. And if the clear next interlocking indication does not display, the train must stop and contact the train dispatcher for instructions. B. If the clear and the interlocking indication cannot be displayed, the train must perform EC1 substituting with the track warrant control non-signaled rules and form EC1 to operate it with restricted to the next interlocking. 5.14.9. The train dispatcher may issue the form EC1 to authorize the train movement in the cab signal territory without intermediate fixed automatic block signal with the train experiences the following: cab signal failure, track control failure, automatic train stop failure, operating with the locomotive operator other than the lead ending of the movement. 5.14.10. The train dispatcher must ensure that the track to be used is clear before issuing the EC1. 5.14.11. The train reform the EC1 of the cab signal territory with a fixed intermediate automatic block signal must not exceed 70 miles an hour within the designated limits. In addition, with the trains with inoperative cab signals with the locomotive operator other than the leading end of end must approach the home signals prepared to stop, determine all non-interlocking face points as properly lined and passing on other unless otherwise instructed for the EC1, and 3. Determine when warning devices have been operating at least 20 seconds at the gates of the equipped with the horizontal before occupying highway crossings equipped with automatic warning devices unless they are authorized instruction on the form EC1. Chapter 6. Train Dispatching.